There are things about going into the past that's just a lot more interesting than some sci-fi fantasy show that's on Netflix.
But how do you go into a movie studio and do a pitch that is, this movie is going to do well because it has nothing to do with anybody? The attitude seems to be, I'm correcting the flaws in this piece of art. And that's the scummy thing that rubs people the wrong way.
You see these showrunners openly discuss of the fact that they have not even played the video games that they're adapting into a show. Like, what are we doing? Hey, welcome to The Great Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. I am Kevin Lieber. I am going backwards, and with me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
You didn't give an answer in what we were just talking about like 2 minutes ago, which was before we hit record, we were talking about how we would spend excess money. And Kevin, you didn't say what you would do. That's not a necessity in life, not like an improvement in life. So, I don't know, doing something useful with your house, a construction project, that doesn't count. You have $1 million to burn. What do you burn this on?
Okay, so I don't know if this is sufficient because it's not like some sort of sports car or some typical extravagance. But I have actually been kind of thinking about this lately in terms of my own selfish frustrations, I guess, with the fact that super rich people don't seem, and maybe I'm completely wrong about this, they don't seem to fund artists. And that's what I would do. Like, I do that already on a really, really pathetically small scale. I'm big into supporting Kickstarters. I supported Death Inc. Death Inc.'s Kickstarter. He's making a game. He started a Kickstarter. Hey, I need some money to make my game. And I'm in,
When was this?
Oh, the last month.
I completely missed it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you could still contribute to it. I don't know. I think that it's closed though. But I like doing that stuff. I like supporting Andrew Bowser and his Onyx the Fortuitous Kickstarter. Philip Summers, who's a artist, every time he has some sort of project, I back it immediately. A friend of the Create Unknown, Dean Lamb, guitar player for Archspire, just a few days ago, they launched their own Kickstarter. They left their record label and they explained why. If I remember correctly, they said that the band got like 2% from every album sale or something insane like that. So, basically nothing. You get like $1 per record that you sell when you're with a label. So they decided to go independent. And in order to do so, they launched a Kickstarter. And fans can fund the completion of their new album and pre-order it and everything. And I did that within 1 hour, I think, of that Kickstarter launching. So, it's something that I'm already interested in, but at a really small scale, $50 here and $30 here, that sort of thing. If I had that $1 million that you're talking about, I don't know how far 1 million would go, but those are the types of things I think about, is that I would love to be able to, support artists, pay for Jake Roper to make a feature film. Like, that would be awesome. Here, Jake, here's a budget, like, go wild, make the movie that you want to make, because it's so difficult to do that. And it's really very expensive. And it's odd and frustrating to me that there isn't like a clear philanthropic person out there who's focused on the arts. Nobody cares.
Well, aren't you a wonderful person, Kevin?
I like creative projects.
How benevolent.
It's not altruistic in any means. I want this stuff to exist so that I can watch it or I can read it or whatever it is. I just like when people can make stuff. It's the whole tagline of this podcast.
That's actually a really good answer. And it is like a bit of frivolity, you know, it's funding something that you like, that you want to see more of, that you want to be involved in. And that's great. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's what I would do too. I'm going to steal this answer. Because I was saying I have no idea what I would do. It would be stuff like that. It would be encouraging things that don't exist right now because they're not super practical, or it's just nobody's bothering. There's a second tier of opportunities out there where they're not as good as the tier ones, and so people don't fund them really because the opportunity cost just, you know, it's too high. Better things to do with your time and money. So finding some of the tier 2 opportunities that would be really personally enjoyable. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
very boring answer. Very boring charitable answer, but a very good one.
Oh, it is boring, but it is actually important to me. And like I said, I had been thinking about it a lot lately, that there are so many super talented people who just can't afford to make the thing that they want to make for one reason or another, because it's expensive. It's expensive to live, pay your bills, and buy food and all of that stuff. And, you know, you need money to live while you're focused wholeheartedly on making a video game or making a movie or writing a book or whatever it is. It's an all in, you know, you have this long-standing trope of the starving artist. Like, not that many people are willing to starve for their art, but there are plenty of people who would love to still eat bread and eggs while they make their art, and they can't even afford to do that. So I don't know. I don't know why it's not a thing. I know like a lot of movies do get made that are horrible. I don't quite understand how those get made, but it just seems to me like there are a lot of really talented people who are not able to make cool stuff. Like Philip Summers is making this Mega Man, like the ultimate Mega Man 1 strategy guide, like hard-covered book full of like beautiful original illustrations and maps and all this stuff. And like, look, I have no desire to go back and play Mega Man 1. Like, I played that game as a kid. I found it really, really hard, especially once you get to like Dr. Wily's world. You know, it's a hard game, but I funded it anyway because I like him, and I'm glad that he's doing something creative that he's passionate about and interested in. So it's kind of an open question that I've had in general. I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast are of the same mindset and do support their creators that they're interested in, whether it's through Patreon. The people who listen to this podcast and support it on Patreon literally make this podcast happen. But, you know, how many people really pull that trigger? It's not a lot. Like, even with, I've supported a lot of video games on Kickstarter, and, you know, it ends up being like a couple thousand people back it. It's like, that's not that many people.
It's a lot of people. And it depends on how you think about it. You know, like in terms of like video game sales, no, it's not a lot of people. But when I think of like 2,000, 3,000 people together in one place, it's massive. It's huge. If we were recording this right now in front of an audience of 3,000, we would be Rogan-esque.
Yeah, I want to encourage people, like, if there are creators who you like, if there's things you want to exist in the world, you know, and you have the means, you should consider supporting them. So that's my answer. That's a totally different topic. The topic today is about my recent revelation of how I am going backwards when it comes to the types of entertainment that I'm enjoying lately. Because we've done a lot of podcasts, and I did a few solo while you were away, about my like endless frustration with new movies and new TV shows. And I even had one recently in the realm of video games where I was like, I don't even know how much I like video games anymore. There's this game that came out, Expedition 33, that should have been 100% in my wheelhouse. Everything about it, like, checked all of the Kevin boxes. And everyone is calling this game a masterpiece and the game of the year and one of their favorite games of all time. And I didn't like it. I was bored by it. I was frustrated by it. I found it tedious. I stopped playing it. And after that, I was like, I don't even know what I like anymore. Do I just not like anything? Am I like deeply depressed right now? Like, what is going on with me? So what I've started doing is just going backwards. I've, been reading books lately. I just finished reading Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy, which came out in like 1985, I think.
Yeah, mid-80s, yeah.
You have pushed this John Updike Rabbit Run book on me as a suggestion. So I got that today. That came out in like 1960. And then the other thing I've been doing lately is watching Columbo, which is a murder mystery from the 1970s.
I wondered about this because you made a Columbo reference somewhere. Maybe it was on Twitter, and I saw that. Like, why is he thinking about Columbo? And who gets this reference? I was thinking about the Columbo thing, the tweet, the same way I think about all the stuff I don't ever say in tweet. Because I'm like, this is obscure to modern life. Nobody cares about this now. And you throw out Columbo, and I forget somebody in the Create Unknown community responded to it. And, they're Columbo fans too. It was obvious.
Yeah, no, it was very funny that they were talking about how they watched the entire series with their mom and they like really loved Columbo. And there's just so many things about that show that I think go along with this topic that I'm really enjoying. One of which is that it's a slow burn. Like, it takes its time. There are like long establishing shots and environmental shots. And I was watching an episode yesterday, and this killer was trying to switch cars. So he was trying to switch his car with the murder victim's car in his garage. And, to hide the vehicle of the person that he just killed. And this shot goes on for like 2 minutes of him like pulling the car out, backing the other car in, closing the garage door, just an extended single cam shot of this guy parking a car. Like, I'm like, this would never in a million years be in a show today, because, well, nothing's really happening. It's not really pushing the plot along. You're not learning anything about the character. There's nothing in his parking of the car that's later revealed to be a clue for Columbo to solve. It's just the act of doing it. And these episodes are long. So without commercials, they're like an hour and a half. Each one is like a movie, is literally feature film length. They're very, very long for him to solve this murder. And the way that it plays out is that the beginning of the show shows you the murder, shows you why it happened, who did it, and how they did it. And then the rest, like the other like 80 minutes of the show, is Columbo trying to piece it together and solve the murder. And I don't know, there's just something relaxing, it's just nice to vibe with about it. It's cool to see the cars from the 70s. Like I like seeing that. I like to see the way that people are dressed in the 70s, their hairstyles. It's all very new to me because I was not alive then, to just enter another world that was a real world.
So you're not revisiting Columbo or anything else. It's not like you watched it as a kid or anything. You're hitting it for the first time?
Yes. I never watched it
interesting.
before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But there are things about going into the past that makes it like a transformative experience for me watching it now. That's just a lot more interesting to me than some, I don't know, like sci-fi or fantasy show that's on Netflix where there's no cultural touch points to, and it's a bunch of CG, and that they just recorded the whole thing in some warehouse in front of a gigantic green screen. Like, there's no texture to it. There's just nothing compelling about it to me. It's boring.
No, I can see that. Well, I don't watch a lot of new stuff compared to most people. I did, though. I watched a newish movie just the other day. This weekend, I did. I watched Uncharted, and that was it's kind of the sort of movie that I just wouldn't ever watch.
It's based on a
video I just wouldn't.
game.
Yeah. Do you remember the tweet that
Uncharted?
Yeah. I wish it had blown up. It was April 25th, 2020. We were in the depths of COVID. There wasn't much to look forward to in the world except for this tweet. Video game idea. Nathan Drake travels the world to discover and fight over pristine historical undergarments. Uncharted. One of the best ideas I've ever had in my life. This movie came out in 2022. Mark Wahlberg and Tom
Holland.
What's his name?
Tom Holland.
Tom Holland, yeah. And it was, it was like entertaining, I suppose. I mean, I don't regret having watched it, but there wasn't much to it. It was just, action stuff and very gentle puzzle solving. And I think what's interesting about the Columbo that you described is that you basically get the solution and then unravel the puzzle throughout that whole thing.
Right.
And that's definitely something that appeals to certain types of people and not others. And also, I think older people with the patience to do that. There's a reason why 12-year-olds don't go bonkers over the New York Times crossword.
Yeah.
Not so much, not like 72-year-olds. You know what I mean? And it also takes a great deal of appreciation for all the little tidbits in that puzzle. Even noticing them and understanding them is very hard to do for a young person. I think if you'd watched, or actually, let me ask you this. If you'd watched Columbo at 18, would you have liked it?
No, I don't think so at all. I think I would have found it very boring. Yeah, definitely. Because I remember as a kid hating Murder, She Wrote also. I thought Murder, She Wrote was really, really boring. And I have watched Murder, She Wrote in recent years, and I found it great.
Very good.
Yeah, it's exquisitely put together.
Is very dangerous place.
Yeah, well, just, the way that they set things up and the way that she puts the puzzle pieces together. It's all really interesting. But then also, I do think that there's that element of distance from that era that makes it more interesting to me now. Seeing, Murder, She Wrote was really like 80s, I think. Columbo was, mostly 70s. But it's more interesting now to see that. I mean, I did the same thing a couple of years ago with Westerns because I've been frustrated by movies for a really long time. So it's like, well, why don't I just watch a bunch of, quote unquote classics and see if they hold up, see if I like them. So I went through a bunch of Clint Eastwood films. I went through a bunch of John Wayne films, some that didn't have either of them, like High Noon. And I really liked it. I really liked all of them. I wasn't bored by them. I wasn't like, oh, this is outdated or anything like that. I sat and watched. I was like, that was a good movie. I really liked that, as opposed to trying to sit down and watch some new blockbuster where I'm just like, there's nothing for me here. There's nothing that I'm compelled by to watch this. One of the big problems that I have in general that you see now is how adaptations are treated, because, whether it's like a video game adaptation or a book adaptation, there's this insistence upon changing really critical elements of what made the original story popular, because the people, well, I don't know exactly the reason, but my theory is the people who are making these adaptations are full of narcissistic hubris, and they want to, and they can't get a job doing something original. So if they have some idea for a property, for a new IP, It will not get funded. So instead, they'll work on, some video game adaptation and then inject whatever they want into it, inject, the story that they want to tell into it, regardless of what the original story's intent was or characters or how they interacted. And then you end up with this thing that's just totally muddled and confused. And I see that happening over and over and over again. And people complain about it. I mean, you see it all the time. People are like, why did they change this? They completely changed this story. And the people making it don't care. Like, they don't care, because if they cared, they'd stop doing that. But they're not stopping that. They just keep doing it over and over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, we talked at one point about, maybe it was like 2 years ago when, lists of the top grossing films had come out, and like 90% of everything that succeeds is, a remake or a franchise. And with the remakes, yeah, I don't really understand this. So like Charles Kahn just posted in the episode chat, this news bit about Greta Gerwig, making a Narnia movie that is, quote, radically different from previous films. Well, yeah, it could be stylistic. Probably it'll be very different in the focus that is a betrayal of C.S. Lewis.
Yes.
And I don't understand that. What's the point? Why wouldn't you just make your new thing? And then, you don't have to worry about that. But I think there's this whole phenomenon. Everything you just described is extremely immature to me. Extremely immature. Like mentally defective, immature. Not your take on it.
Yeah, I was like, hey, what did I do?
Why don't you go brew up some hemlock tea, Kevin, and just end this?
All right.
No, the phenomenon you're describing is the result of immaturity. So there's this constant push for people to be represented, for the ability to see themselves in movies and characters, and just all of this stuff. That's stage one. Phase one of thinking about the world is you. This is how babies work, right? Babies are completely self-centered because it's the only thing they really understand. And then, phase two is getting a sense of other people existing. Kevin, you've talked about the peekaboo experiment, right? The research.
We did was that on you? Vsauce 2, I think. I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast.
Yeah. And it's essentially the development that occurs where, if a child's eyes are covered, they think everything stops existing, right? And at a certain point, they realize that just their vision is covered and the world is still existing. The person who is in front of them, is still actually there. And then understanding
object permanence,
how that's,
isn't that what that is?
Object permanence. Yeah. Understanding how that's working with somebody in front of them who's covering their eyes. Like this is developmentally a pretty big, important step. Well, I look at something, I completely relate. Okay. Congratulations on the baby step, toward humanity. Well, the reason, what you just described on Columbo and some of these other things, now you're older. You have more appreciation. You're bored by, or straight up disapproving of a lot of the lame stuff. Now you're interested in irrelevance. And that's a really advanced stage of things, is that the irrelevance is what's exciting. And you want to understand it. You want to see if buried in that irrelevance, it is something that's a part of you that maybe you didn't even realize. You can't lay it bare when you're surrounded by, familiar things all the time. Occasionally, you'll get a surprise, but generally you have to slam yourself up against completely and totally different things to activate anything useful. People have a sense of this when they talk about travel. This is why they think international travel and stuff like that is useful, because you're popping yourself into a completely irrelevant area. Maybe a language you can't understand. Maybe a way of life that is just totally foreign. Nothing in common at all. Well, you can get a lot of value out of that, right? And it's the same thing with the books and the movies. And this used to be something that people acknowledged and actually did on purpose. No one will get this reference because it's as obscure as it gets. There's a man, William Arrowsmith, who is a humanities scholar, and he wrote a paper called the Future of Teaching: The Molding of Men. And part of that paper, which I think was an address he gave somewhere that was then transcribed into this article, was that the irrelevance of the classics is one of, if not the most important elements. That, because it was the beginning when he said this, it was the beginning of that. What do the dead white men have to offer in the modern era? What is the point of reading the Canterbury Tales or something like that? Why would you read some novel from the 1800s that, you're being told is part of the Western canon, but like, honestly, what's it have to do with your life? Well, when you read them, it turns out a whole lot. There's a basic sense of this in the appreciation for stuff like Romeo and Juliet that has endured. That is relevance, difficult young relationships and family situations, whatever, that is baked into the total irrelevance of being so many centuries old. Very few people are in a similar situation now. But there are pieces of it that most people can recognize. Would they get the same value out of a totally modern update? I don't think so. Because there isn't that contrast. The Jane Austen books, not just the books, but like the movies and some of the shows that have come out of them, it's total irrelevance comparing modern life to the setting of Jane Austen's books. However, how many girls love those movies and books because they see little elements that are totally relevant? But how do you go into a movie studio and do a pitch that is, this movie is going to do well precisely because it has nothing to do with anybody? This is not a great pitch in 2025. So they kind of bastardize it and at best, put this weird, all of current culture into an old story, and it doesn't work. You've destroyed the irrelevance that makes it so good.
Yeah, there were a couple of things I just thought of that I do like about Columbo. One is that everyone's smoking all the time. And that is so different than anything today where if someone is smoking, you get a warning ahead of time at the beginning. Warning.
Oh, you still get it now on Netflix.
Involves smoking. It's like, that's how far removed we are from a society in the 1970s where everyone is smoking in hospitals, smoking on airplanes, smoking. It's interesting to see that world. I mean, the crux of watching a fantasy is to be transported into a different world. Well, you can do that just by watching something from the 70s. You're in another world. It is just there are different rules, there are different structures, there are different, common social graces. And it's fascinating to me to watch for many reasons, and that's one of them. But the solipsistic and infantilized baby brain thing that you're talking about, it bothers me so much as somebody who cares about art. Like, this is going to sound, there's no way to talk about art without getting pretentious, but like I'm currently in the process of trying to write a book. Okay. And everything that goes into that book, I have thought about a lot. I've thought about why the characters are the way they are. And this is why these are the characters, and they're this way for a reason. And they react to situations based upon that structure. Okay. If someone 30 years from now adapted that into a movie for Netflix or whatever, and they changed all of that, essentially, in my opinion, on a whim. So you're taking something that someone spent years thinking about, honing, editing, and putting down onto paper, years of their life, of themselves, of their personal experiences, of their worldview and how they see the world. And they've translated it into this book, say. And now you, some random person in Hollywood, is going to come in and redline that thing and say, that's not important. Let's change this. This doesn't really matter. That character can act like this, and this character can be like this instead. It is infuriating to me, I think, to a degree that like most people wouldn't relate to, but it like boils my blood that this is even happening at all. Like, it is maddening to me that this is even a thing that we have to talk about, that's even happening, that no less happens every now and then, but is seeming to be the norm. Like, this is like the standard process now, is to say, that thing that brilliant artist toiled over to create, that then miraculously millions of people loved and related to and enriched their lives with, that doesn't matter. That's not important.
It's a delicate thing.
Because that doesn't, it doesn't stand. It's no longer, appropriate for our modern age. It's like, then make your own thing. I know that they can't because it won't get funded. They can't make their own idea. But I question whether they really have. You couldn't go back and make something as good as that. So instead, you're dragging that corpse out of a grave and you're defiling it. That's really how I think of it. You're defiling the corpse of greatness.
This, you say that kind of thing probably infuriates you more than most people. I want to talk about something that happened last night. This is the second time it's happened to me. We mentioned John Updike earlier. So, John Updike in 1960 wrote a piece for the New Yorker about Ted Williams' last baseball game. And it is effortlessly beautiful. You don't have to care at all about sports to enjoy this piece, because it's not actually about sports at all. It perfectly encapsulates everything about the subject, and also the experience of being a fan of Boston and the Red Sox and Ted Williams at that time. It's masterful. It's masterful. And I don't know what the best piece of sports writing is ever, but if there is a debate over it, this piece has to be in there. It's called Hub Fans Bid Kid Adieu. Okay. Boston used to be referred to as the Hub City. That was kind of the nickname. It's always been a bit of a lesser little brother to New York City geographically. Anyway, hub was a term that we don't use much now. Probably the only holdover is the restaurant Top of the Hub, which is very high in the, I think, Prudential Center and overlooks the city. But anyway, when you look it up in Google, that article, which is available, it displays with the proper title. And when you click that, it displays with the proper title on the page. But if you share the link, they've changed in the metadata the text that is exposed on the thumbnail to Boston fans bid kid adieu. Ted Williams being the kid as one of his nicknames. This is the slightest change you can really imagine. As far as I know, the piece hasn't been edited at all. It's intact. But they obviously changed this for SEO purposes. It could have been automatic. It could have been something in a batch replacement that they did across the New Yorker archives. I don't know. But they changed it. That is bothersome to me. It's a dangerous thing to tweak art. It just is. It just is. If I said, in so many famous paintings, Jesus Christ doesn't reflect really the physical realities of the world. We need to give him 10 pounds of lean muscle mass. We need to give him 20 extra pounds of dead weight because, we're a lot bigger than I don't know, whatever the change is. You look at that and say, that's probably not a good move. That's offensive to sensibilities, to the original intent of the artwork. All of these arguments that would be rock solid to most people. So why would you change your time? Why would it be okay to jettison a really smooth, particularly chosen title? And I can't be certain that an editor didn't come up with it. I have a feeling that Updike did, because that sort of flow is reminiscent of his writing. I have a very strong feeling that he titled that himself. How do you change that and think it's okay? Who are you to make that change? I don't know. I don't know what kind of arrogance it takes to alter somebody else's thought without saying explicitly, here is my complete and total reimagining of a great idea. If you do that, it's like a cover song. That's fine. You're openly doing it in your own style, and maybe it's good, maybe it's not. Dolly Parton herself said that Whitney Houston's cover of I Will Always Love You was much better than her own song. There are actually a lot of covers that are better than the originals. So there's a place for it in art. But what you described, Kevin, is more like correction. The attitude seems to be, I'm correcting the flaws in this piece of art.
Yeah.
And that's the scummy, shitty thing that rubs people the wrong way.
As you were talking, I was thinking it is drawing a mustache on the Mona Lisa. That's the best way I can describe it. I think it's drawing a mustache on the Mona Lisa. And this is why I'm going backwards, is I just feel like so much of the stuff that comes out now is drawing mustaches on Mona Lisa. And I hope that it rings true to people listening, but that's how I feel about it. I said, I did a whole podcast about movies lying, and there's so much entertainment right now where I feel like it's a lie. Like, you're lying to me. Like, this is not the story. This is not how it was constructed. These are not the characters. You're lying to me. For whatever reason, I don't care. Like, I literally don't care what your rationale is for lying. You're lying. And
you've lied.
And I'm not into it. Like, I don't want any part of it. I'm not interested in your lie. I'm not interested in your mustache on the Mona Lisa, because that's not art. Like, that's not coming from a true place of artistry. It's coming from a place of graffiti.
Oh, that's a good term for it. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's like artistic graffiti. You have some architect in the 16th century built this beautiful chapel, and now you're painting over it with a spray can because you think that there's something wrong with it and you could make it better. No. This is the way that it should be. It's like, no, that's not the way that it should be. The way that it was is the way that it should be. And the Lord of the Rings movies, because I thought about this the other day, as I was like ruminating on my frustration with this concept. The Lord of the Rings movies were like a love letter by Peter Jackson to those books.
For the most part, yeah.
He really, really loved and appreciated that material, and I think went all in on adapting it in a way that was as true to the source as it could be, while still being, a Hollywood blockbuster and all of that stuff. And those movies stand the test of time. Those movies are great. And people look back on those movies as like an example of how to do an adaptation right. But it's because
it wasn't 100% faithful too. There was a blend of that respect and love for the source material, still making some tweaks. Charles Kahn points out that the elves in the books were not at Helm's Deep. Okay. And there's always, like with the Hobbit series too, the big question of why did we cut out Tom Bombadil? Which Tom Bombadil is one of the most obnoxious characters in all of fiction. I hated reading that section. I did not like it, but it's like, no, I'm not a page skipper. I'm not a chapter skipper. If I don't like it, I still slog through it. But, my friend John, to him, that's the very best part of those books. So, it's a personal thing that I don't like Tom Bombadil, but you can love and respect the thing and still make some adjustments. You always have to make adjustments anyway, translating a book to being a movie. And Kevin, you and I went through this when we first started working together. I like bringing this example up every couple years. There's a video on a computer called the Zorba. And there's some material about the video game Zork. Well, when I was working on the script, I put together, I don't know how much, but it was enough to matter to me, about the company Infocom that made Zork. It's a crazy story. Their rise and fall, their creation even is super interesting. And when we went over the script, Kevin, you just said, like, this is good material. This would be good in an article. This is bad for a video. And it was a big sort of select this page and control X. And it was absolutely the right move. It was not a fit for video content. You got to make adjustments when you go from writing to visual. And I understand that. But where do you draw the line? How do you do this, Kevin? This is my question for you. Well, how do you love and respect the material and still be, make good art of your own?
I think Peter Jackson screwed this up himself later with the Hobbit movies, because then he tried to stretch that pretty short book into 3 epic films, and no one talks about those movies now as a result. I think if he had just made that one movie and stuck to honoring the source material, it would have been really, really successful and like a fantastic bookend to the original trilogy. But he didn't, and there was a lot of money involved, I'm sure. We got to make 3 movies out of this, and we'll repeat the success of the original trilogy. And, that movie those movies have completely faded into total obscurity. Nobody cares or talks about their memory hold. I've never hear anyone mention them except in like a mode of derision.
Yeah, they pop on the lists on HBO Max, here and there they do. But you're right. They don't have the memes about them. They don't have, people talking and referencing them, and nothing like Lord of the Rings. I get 50 Lord of the Rings memes in my feed a day. My friend John, who I mentioned, who adores Tom Bombadil, most of our back and forths for like 15 years have been Lord of the Rings memes. So it's constant, but I don't recall any Hobbit memes.
No. But the converse of that is that you see these showrunners and, directors or whatever openly discuss the fact that they have not even played like the video game, for instance, that they're adapting into a show. Like they're not even familiar with the source material. Like not only are they not adhering to it, they don't even know what it is. So like, what are we doing? I just throw my hands up in all of these instances, and they openly talk. It's not a secret. They go on, Hollywood Reporter or whatever and do an interview, and they're like, yeah, I don't even know what this is. I don't know what this game is. I never read the book. It doesn't matter. We're just going to make our own thing. We're going to make our own meat puppet and attach some marionette strings to it and dance it around. And hopefully people like it.
Well, the antidote to this is simply not bothering with that and going backwards, like you opened with, is going back to the Columbos, going back to, older films, older books. You can bypass it by simply ignoring it. So whenever I read something that's like, oh, we don't make this product like we used to, kind of thing, I'm like, well, you don't have to buy it. You just don't buy it. And I understand there's no immediate change from that. You can't buy it, and the one person not buying the product doesn't make a difference. It is insignificant. You have to trust that a lot of other people won't buy it too. So it's not satisfying at all to just make your own choice and call it a day. But that's the useful thing, is that, Kevin, you and I have talked a lot about modern fiction. Modern fiction is overwhelmingly written for women. It's not like the old days. It's not. Some of it's very, very good. But, I don't want to read about, choosing between the fairy prince who's or elvish prince who's a good boy, and the demonic whatever the hell who's the bad boy, and who's going to love me, and what, I don't know. That's not for me. But a lot of people like it. I will spend no time or energy ever lamenting that. I cannot bring myself to do it, when the solution for me is that I read something else. Bless the people who love the elvish werewolf romances. I don't know. But you can go back to, and I'm going to keep using John Updike because Charles Kahn likes his name so much. You read things that are completely irrelevant to you, that have snippets of things you recognize. If not in yourself, you recognize them in the world. Kevin, I'm going to spoil a few things for you. They're not big details. Rabbit Angstrom's job is demonstrating a fruit and vegetable peeler in a 5 and dime store. That is his initial job in the book. This is not critical to the plot, so I'm okay with saying it. He's essentially the slap chop guy in person for a little vegetable peeler. That's the sort of thing that belongs to 1960 in a way it doesn't belong to 2025 so much. Maybe you've got that Vince Offer slap chop reference, but these are TV people, Billy Mays, whatever. You don't really go down to the store and see somebody demonstrating a kitchen device very often. But you'll read this, you're like, oh, that's quirky. And when a car gets described, they have like fins on the back and, some Buick with fins and like all the stuff that's sort of like the people smoking in Columbo, and the things they're wearing and all that. That's all right. But then you'll hit something. This is another. There's a point where a character freaks out over how many men a woman has slept with. How many times a day on Twitter do I see references to the body count? What that says about a woman, what that doesn't say about a woman. Is it relevant? Is it not? A lot of podcasts debate precisely this. It's the sort of thing that what's the name of the podcast? His guy's name is Andrew something. He's always talking to women. Whatever is the name of it. Yeah, because I see at whatever in the background on all that. That's the sort of thing they're talking about constantly. The feminists are talking about it. The, red/black pill men are talking about it. Well, John Updike was talking about it through one of his characters in 1960. And it wasn't a scarlet letter, single instance shaming type thing. No. This was a volume of body count. It wasn't a one-time thing that should every woman remain a virgin until married? No. This is 1960 at a time when social behavior was beginning to change markedly. And the body count debate was a major issue to both this man and a woman. Is it any different in that scene as it is right now on Twitter? I don't think so. You only really get hit with that when you're reading something that's like 65 years old. Everything else is unrecognizable, from the way people are talking to the cars they're driving to the situations they find themselves in. Everything is irrelevant until you see that one single familiar word or familiar item. And when you're thinking about it now, you're thinking about it then in the book, your level of understanding of that issue increases tenfold. When you just watch or read what's familiar to you, nothing happens. Absolutely nothing happens. It just doesn't. No, if I were to watch,
it's a good way to describe it, because that's how I felt watching so much modern stuff. Is I feel like nothing is happening to me or in the show. I'm just like, this is nothing.
It's not useful. It's not useful at all. People have at times used different parallels here, where it's like, oh, if you don't ever use your muscles, if you don't ever strain them in some way, you'll never have any muscle growth. Like, you have to use them beyond their capacity,
use them or lose them.
To be able to grow.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. That's, it's not the most original comparison, but it's true. If you don't have friction, if you don't have strain, then yeah, you atrophy. And you just, it is the difference between onanism and procreation. For those of you who like language, one is useful to the world and the other is not. You have to be honest that what you're watching, the book you're reading, the video game you're playing, I don't know how this works with video games, if at all, but what you're watching, what you're reading, it's okay to say, I just like this. I'm not getting any development out of this. I just plain like it. That's okay. I watch a lot of that, and I watch some of the same things over again because, they're cool. But if you're serious at all about understanding people, about creating art, any of the things we have ever talked about, you need constant friction. You need difficulty. You need resistance. It's great when you have things that you take for granted in the sense that it doesn't even occur to you that there's another way to process them, be totally shit on and challenged. Just being exposed to that is fantastically useful. Even when it doesn't change your mind about anything, you have better reasons and a better understanding of what you already think. So it solidifies what's there. You can't lose. You cannot lose. You understand what you already think better, or you have a new understanding that expands everything. Well, the slop, the brain rot, the pure shit that's on everything is a waste of time for anyone who's interested in any kind of development like that. You have to go toward the irrelevance. And I have a theory on this. This will be the end of my diatribe on this part. There are two phenomena that to me typify the appeal. It's the kiddie pool of this happening. The first one is the wave of love for British pop in the Beatles era and the British explosion that came from that. Because that was, in the context of American music, slightly irrelevant, but totally accessible. It was a really easy step to take. It was super interesting, but it was totally different. It was different enough, but it wasn't some leap. It wasn't like, what do they call the Mongolian throat singing? Do you know the name for that?
Yeah. Where they can hit like three different notes at the same time.
Yeah. Well, that's a leap. Yeah, to go from Elvis to Mongolian throat singing is a bridge too far.
Yeah, I was thinking like Perry Como to acid jazz or something like that. It'd be tough.
Yeah. Well, that's an accessible thing, and millions and millions of people, they got so into it, it even defined their personalities. It was massively influential musically, artistically, just generally in life. It's a big deal to get into something foreign. That didn't happen a lot in that era, to be obsessed with a non-American thing. The second time I think this has happened is with anime, where it's basically cartoons that are a little different than you're used to. That is another one of those. It has that tinge of irrelevance, but it's totally accessible. It's not a big leap to go from animation and storytelling that you're used to just a different strain of it. And that has been the number one artistically cultural force in terms of change in 30 years globally. Embracing all things anime, manga, etc. is the biggest new thing. Well, it's that irrelevance that appeals. I don't think if cartoons drawn in a slightly different style that were just wholly American would have taken off. I don't think so at all. I think they had to be irrelevant. You had to have girls and boys and heroes all behaving differently than you would expect, in a different style, different types of stories, but still accessible. So anyway, you love Britpop, you love anime, you're already embracing irrelevance and seeing the value in it. So you can do this with books and movies. You can take a bigger leap because you're not 12 anymore. You know, in Kevin's case, you're 18 or 19. Yeah. You have the maturity and the patience to watch a Columbo and enjoy the slow burn of an intricate puzzle, which even that pacing is radically different than pretty much everything, even the really good stuff that's modern.
Yeah.
Well, read a book that's not otherwise on your list. Read something that's kind of modernish, but not. I'm going to list authors, most of whom I don't personally like, but they qualify here. I do love John Updike. Philip Roth is probably his number one contemporary. Gore Vidal, who I sincerely dislike, but still fits this. Norman Mailer. These are all, 50 years ago. 50 years ago, these people were commenting on life. And that makes it easy to recognize some parts and be blown away by the irrelevance of others. Watch movies from, Kevin, what's a good movie from the 70s that fits this vein?
Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver is a good one. It's a very good 70s movie. Dirty Harry is another one.
The French Connection.
Yeah, French Connection.
I did watch also last week the new Bruce Willis Death Wish.
Oh.
Because I really like the original Death Wish.
Yeah.
That was a case where they changed it up, made it modern. It was different. The characters are different. And it was good. It was really good.
Death Wish might be the best example. That movie is extremely 70s.
Yeah, it is.
It is another world.
Death Wish is, you have Death Wish. That's probably more relevant now than it has been since it came out.
Yeah.
People really are debating both internally and externally what to do about bad things. How should an individual react? What is just? What is not just? Yeah, it's fascinating. That's a great example. But these things don't have to be, something from the 1840s. You don't have to go back and read, Pilgrim's Progress, some John Milton thing to feel this phenomenon. It's actually better if you take a little more than a baby step. 90s isn't good enough. A little more than the baby step, but not a huge leap. Go back to Columbo. Go back to the 70s. Is that the rule, Kevin, here? Is that 70s were before?
I think that's a decent rule just because we're awash in so much 80s nostalgia and have been for like a decade that I think that 70s is untapped. And the 70s was very, very different than the 80s and very, very different than the 60s. It was a really bizarre decade that, like I said earlier, you want to be teleported to a different time. You can do that by watching stuff from a different time now. And we're so far removed from it that it does become like watching a fantasy almost. You're like, I can't even believe some of this stuff was commonplace, but it's right there, on the celluloid. And that's why I'm going backwards. Well, I have to throw in. I mean, I know we've been going for an hour here, but I really want to throw.
I don't care. This is too good.
All right,
No, this is amazing. We can go 4 hours on this topic because Spenceroni and Cheese just mentioned something absolutely critical that I'm queuing until we're done with your part.
All right, so I'll go on my tangent because this is really, really important. Is because I spent so much of my little thesis talking about, not treating source material with reverence. Well, not only not that, but treating it with defiance and, spitting on it in a lot of cases. That's one problem with modern entertainment. Here's another problem that I read about last week that is probably, it's not as like spiritually damaging to me, but it might be, no. It is more spiritually damaging to the greater culture. Okay. That's my preface. It is the fact of now considering things like Netflix, HBO Max, etc., a second screen viewing experience. So this is, from what I understand, a new-ish industry term that the people making this content are using in the development of the content, in the development of a movie, in the development of a series. They are considering
it. What does this mean?
Well, this is what it means. It means that the first screen for anyone watching is their phone. The phone is the first screen. So when anyone's sitting down to watch Stranger Things,
I hate this.
Season 27.
Continue.
Okay.
I hate this.
Their primary screen that they're looking at is their phone. Now, if their attention is focused on the phone first, then the screen, their TV screen or their laptop screen, wherever they're watching the show, is the secondary screen. It is the second screen. What does that mean for the show? It means that the show cannot require the viewer's full attention by definition. Like at its core, it cannot require the full attention of the person watching it because it's not the main thing that they're looking at or listening to or paying attention to. It becomes background noise. So if everything is background noise and everything is secondary to staring at TikTok and Googling what actors were in other movies that you're watching while you're watching it, or scrolling Twitter, whatever it is, then you can't make something intricate. You can't make something that you have to notice subtlety in. You can't have something where you see a character do something on screen and then 20 minutes later it's paid off, right? You can't have a setup that's nuanced that you pay off later and becomes this big reveal, which is, again, going back to what I'm liking about Columbo, is that this is kind of what the whole show is that you really have to pay attention to Columbo, or else there's no point in watching it. You have to listen to him interviewing witnesses and suspects, and what, the way they react to certain questions, whether they turn off the music that they were listening to because they were asked a question that implicates them as the murderer. Like, there are all of these little details in that show that if you're paying attention to it, then they pay off later when he finally solves it and puts it all together. But
this must be why I get constant obnoxious bits of dialogue that tell me like really basic things, really on the nose.
In the new
this
shows.
Has to be it. In the new shows, yeah. So I'll be watching something, and a line that a character says is something they would never, ever say in real life, because it's so jam-packed with obvious detail. And I can see that being necessary if that's my second screen. If I'm like half paying attention, I need that like bit of, Cliff Notes, Spark Notes level dialogue to tell me what I need to know to progress in the show.
Yeah, that to say everything out loud. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of the new literalism thing that we talked about like a few podcasts ago. And I mentioned the example from some Sex and the City movie where Carrie is stood up at the altar and she yells, "I'm humiliated," which is right. Exactly what you're talking about. Like, she has to yell out loud, "I am humiliated," rather than, her behavior on screen.
Obviously
showing that she's humiliated. Yeah, exactly. But this second screen thing is now baked into the development of these shows. They are working under the conditions that whoever's watching it is half paying attention.
Oh, that's going to change things quickly.
It already has. Yeah. I mean, that's a huge part of, it's probably the major, I think, my, what is an artist sort of thing is secondary. That's largely a me problem. But what's primary is that, these shows are made for you to not even really pay attention to. And what you get is crap.
Jen has a pretty good point here that we will follow up eventually. She says that she thinks it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing, which came first, making what I like this phrase, inelegant content. I like that. It is sort of like a brute force. It's like a hammer, you swing a hammer. There's not a lot of finessing with a hammer. And honestly, if you are doing finessing with a hammer, you're using the wrong tool. At a point where you're doing something with a hammer that's a little different than normal, you should be using a different tool for it. But anyway, I like that inelegant content. Refusing to keep the quiet part quiet, she says. That, or people not paying close attention to the content they're consuming. Both of these matter. And I was, we were talking, Kevin, a few weeks ago about how much audiences are to blame, how much readers are to blame TV watchers, movie watchers are to blame. I think they're massively culpable here. I think that, for all we're being fed slop. No, you idiot, you're eating it. Yes, you're being served it. Yeah. But you're eating the slop.
You're eating the slop. Yeah.
This is on you.
Man.
Completely on you. And people are like, patronize the things you want more of. And yes, that is how it works. But that's a very, very long process. It's not linear. It's not guaranteed. Seeing A24 develop is part of this, where they, whether you like it or not, their movies are a bit different than most of the others. And some people latched onto that, wanted more, and well, A24 is a thing now. But it takes forever. It's irrational in the sense that you approving of non-slop and consuming that is, it doesn't make a difference. It does in the aggregate, but you are just you. Honestly, you're just you. Unless you're somebody like a Kino Corner who has a big YouTube channel and is talking intelligently about these things and being really advocating for what's good and criticizing what's bad. You're usually just you, right? And so there's only so much there. But it's your fault most of the time. It's your fault that all of these things stink.
Well, the second screen thing is 100% a market reaction
to
the audience not paying attention. I mean, I actually disagree with it being chicken and egg. I think it's a direct result of people's behavior. If people are sitting there on their phone instead of paying attention to a thing, then the executives start making a thing that they don't have to pay attention to.
Yeah, that's on you, isn't it?
It's cause and effect. That is definitely cause and effect. And it plays into what you're saying about the audiences eating the slop. It's like, okay, so you want to eat slop? Here's more.
Yeah, you did this to yourself is the message that keeps coming back in my head with especially things like books. The reason the elf, fairy, goblin, sex party books are doing so well is because people read them. Like they buy them. It's that simple. But the point that I wanted to mention when we swung through a little bit is something Spenceroni and Cheese said. This going backwards, how important this is, colliding with irrelevance is the primary value in talking to old people. And he says, this is the same as talking to older people. There's always some sort of takeaway, even if you can't relate on every level. Most of the time, you don't relate on much of a level, but there's a little bit. Examining why you don't relate is its own value. But talking to old people is absolutely critical. Something I am struggling with personally, very, very seriously. I mean, it's affecting my life in terms of sadness and misery, is that the old people I like talking to are increasingly disappearing by virtue of being old. I wish I could remember the topic. This was a few days ago. I had COVID last week and was mentally suspect, so I can't recall the details on it. But I was trying to think, who would I talk to about this? And every single person I would have asked about it is dead. And these aren't things that I can look up in a book. It's gone. I will never know. I will absolutely never know, because it's just that channel has been turned off permanently for me, or at least until the next phase of being, whatever that is. But that's how valuable and unique talking to old people is. And Charles Kahn says, once you hit 70, you stop giving a shit. This is generally true. And that's its own awesomeness. But I think that's really like, when you say old, that like 60-ish, 70-ish kind of, even that's not like shockingly old. But things were just so different. They were just radically different. One thing I do remember from the fever dream of COVID is it hit me how brand new, how modern, and I want to say this is about 15 to 20 years, how accessible the nighttime is in a way that it never, ever, ever was. Do you realize that in like 1995, there was virtually nothing to do if you were awake at 3 a.m.?
No, virtually. I think there was literally nothing to do if you were, there was no TV on,
if you had cable, you were okay. But yeah, you remember the American flag would come on and wave, and
no, but even after the American flag, even on cable, it was like a lot of infomercials. It was a lot of infomercials, like after midnight, or maybe it was after 1. It just became like
the lowest value content because nobody was up.
Yeah,
5 people were awake watching it. You couldn't really engage with life if that was your schedule too. You missed life was much more predicated on the day and using the day. It was not much to do. I suppose you could play a console, but you could read a book, whatever.
Play a game. Yeah.
But very few people were up. You couldn't communicate with them.
The game you'd play easily by yourself. You're not playing multiplayer with your friends.
That's right. Nothing was open. There weren't 24-hour things everywhere. Late nighttime was not accessible in normal life. It was not something that you could really use.
Yeah, the world turned off.
The world essentially turned off. That's right. And it was back on again at 8 a.m, whatever. But right now, the world never turns off. Ever. You can absolutely get a job that is a good job that fits with whatever schedule you want. Nobody thinks you're weird either if you keep super late hours like that. They don't think you're a freak. They don't think you're some kind of vampire.
No, we've had people on the podcast who, stay up till 5 and then they sleep till 2. And we had to rouse Weist out of bed once to record a podcast because he slept all day.
Yeah. But it's not just like streamer schedule either. So on Thursday, I have to go to DC to direct a video shoot. It's with a person who is an economist, probably the most knowledgeable person on budgets, state and federal spending kind of thing in the world. This is a scholarly, analytical policy person, right? This is not a streamer. This is the sort of person who writes like op-eds in the New York Times, that level of life, right? And a normal person too, she has a family, she has a normal job, all this stuff, goes to bed at 3 and wakes up at 11. And I was floored by this. I was floored. This is what really it got me thinking about it. It's like, oh, what time are we going to start the shoot? And she's like, well, noon, is really, by the time I'm up and I can drive into Washington, this and that. And I'm like, this is something I've never encountered in this sort of professional. And it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense because she loses nothing by keeping those hours in terms of general life. This would have been unthinkable 20 years ago. There is no way that she could have the life that she has, job she does, all this stuff, with that shifted.
You would have to be a drunk or a
That's right.
a junkie. It was like junkie hours.
Yeah. And that's what we would have thought in 1995.
Yeah.
Somebody is a loser. They're a complete and total loser if this is how they live. And now the nighttime, the deep nighttime is part of life. How many, 100,000 years? I don't know when humanity began. I don't know. Well, let's say 100,000 years, night was inaccessible. And in 15 or 20, no, this is just life now. That's a strange change. Nobody ever thinks about this.
No.
But that's a huge shift. To me, that's as much of a shift as candles and light bulbs eliminating the dark. And there hasn't been a shift in terms of time and how we live as significant since the light bulb changed it. It's unlocked so much. Well, you go back to a book in the 60s, and I want to throw out too, most people like To Kill a Mockingbird. A lot of people had to read it in school. I think it's universally enjoyed. That's another really good example of one of these books that is irrelevant in many, many ways. And there are pockets of relevance. People like that. It was also 1960. It was a very good year for American fiction. But you read a book like that and people are going to bed at like 9. Everybody's going to bed at 9, unless there's some kind of hellcat who's out until midnight. It's crazy to think that was a non-negotiable facet of life. And as recently as really 15 years ago, all of a sudden, now it doesn't matter anymore. It's cool. You're a night owl now. That's all. You're just a night owl.
Yeah, I wonder how many of those things that we just don't recognize that are so critically important and different now in terms of this like overall milieu of things being freaking weird and different. And it just doesn't even come into our brains. But I mean, this is another reason why it's just fascinating to go back. Just go back.
Yes.
It is a portal. It is like a wide open, amazing portal of different times, different worlds, different people, the way they act and treat each other, and even the craft. So I read this thing that was so fascinating to me where people were complaining about. So back in the old days, in the 80s and 90s and a little bit before, TV shows had 22 episodes, I think, a season, something like that. And someone was complaining about how, modern streaming TV shows are only like, 8 episodes or something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas, back in the day, a season is 22. I mean, that's a tremendous difference. It's almost, 4 times more episodes and, or 3 times more episodes. And someone was saying, that meme where it's like, I can't think of an example, but there's a meme of like, we can't do it anymore. We don't know how. Do you know what meme I'm talking about? Where they're like, discussing something that was great in the past. And then they say something like, we can't make it anymore. We don't know how. That was this. Yeah. That was basically the rationale for why there aren't shows that have 22 episodes, because we don't know how. They were saying that like the infrastructure required, in order to produce that many episodes, in 1 year, and then do it all again the next year, and then do it because you have these shows, Severance and Stranger Things or whatever, that take like 4 years to make a new season. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, you had Cheers just cranking out episodes every single year for a decade. And you're like, how did they do that? And the answer is because they had decades of experience in creating the infrastructure in order to produce that much content that quickly and repeatably, whether it was the script writers and the production designers and the editors and everything, the whole production from nuts and bolts was locked in. They had everything down to a science to craft all of this television. And so much of that is gone. Like so much of how to do it, like just doesn't exist anymore. And that was this person's answer to like, oh, why don't we have, shows where it's 22 episodes per year anymore? And we just have this long running sitcom. And there are, obviously still some sitcoms on network television, but I thought that was so interesting that like, we don't know how to do that anymore. Like we do not know how to make that much television in such a short period of time over and over and over again. The machine is gone, and it's, we sold the parts for scrap.
The parts, yeah, that's right. It went to the crusher.
Yeah. It's over. That's a really interesting thing.
You mentioned Stranger Things, and that was another one that I'd been thinking of recently, in this exact vein, because I think that part of the appeal of it is an appeal that people don't fully appreciate or even know is what's appealing to them. It's encased in nostalgia appeal. And that's all everybody talked about. That's what the midwits and the level one thinkers were like, oh, this 80s nostalgia is exceptional. Oh, it's so much fun. I love the 1980s. Isn't that cool? Yeah, there was some of that. It was cool. I like it. However, the most interesting thing to me was the debate that rose in, not big circles, but this came up, was about how unrealistic and stupid it was that like the kids would just like ride their bikes and be gone all day.
Oh yeah.
That's one of those examples of something that we wouldn't have thought anything of. Nobody thought this when Stand By Me, the movie, came out.
Or The Goonies is the same thing. It's the same
Or
setup.
The Goonies.
Yeah, they just leave on their bikes. See ya, Mom. All right, be home for dinner or whatever. And then where did they go? Who knows? Can you contact them? No, you can't.
No. Occasionally there would be concern that like you were hanging out with the wrong person. I hope he's not hanging around with that Jones boy. He's bad for Billy. Like there's something like that. But generally it's like, no, this is fine. This is completely fine. There's a freak out about this, a freak out with Stranger Things. And I think, that's something that you look at it and has become, one of those sources of irrelevance that my life now is nothing like this. This was such a different era. It might as well be 200 years ago. And there's kind of a thrill in that, in realizing it and examining it. I think people liked that a lot. And there were a lot of elements in Stranger Things that highlighted those differences. So it wasn't just a nostalgia play. It's only been 40 years, roughly 40 years from when this was set. Close enough so that a lot of people watching know this life. Like half the people watching know this life, and they appreciate that. But the younger ones are horrified by it. They're pissing their pants over the prospect of it. They don't even, this is what fascinated me. The number of young people who seemed to not want to do that totally eclipsed the ones who were like, oh, that's awesome. I'd love to do that. I really think that more young people were scared of what they were seeing than were excited by, wishing they could do that. This is exactly that friction that is really important. And we did just see it in Stranger Things. I think it wraps up this year. I think the episode, season is coming out. Yeah. We're kind of past the point in that show where, these themes hit, now it's a plot thing. But that's a great example of it. That's really good. What kind of hijinks do kids now get into? None. They get into bullshit bad behavior on social media that may or may not spiral out of control and ruin a life. That's it. But there's not a whole lot of hijinks ensuing.
No, yeah. Online social shaming. That's it. That's not very interesting. But when I was a kid, man, I loved the Goonies. Like the idea of just hopping on a bike with my friends and like uncovering this like pirate treasure cave full of booby traps. And that was the coolest thing ever. And then, you see all the reactions to Stranger Things where people are incredulous and literally don't even believe like that's a thing. You're saying, like, I wouldn't even want to do that. They were afraid of even doing that. They didn't even believe it was real. Like, I don't believe that this is real. Like, this is preposterous that kids would just be able to leave their house and not tell their parents where they were going. One other book that does this, I wanted to shout out, is Summer of Night by Dan Simmons. Now, Summer of Night, I believe, is set in the 1960s, and it's a very similar setup where it's a bunch of kids kind of on their own and dealing with sort of supernatural things and blah, blah, blah. I don't have to tell you the whole plot, but if for some reason,
set in 1960, this was the critical year.
This is when everything changed.
Everything changed, or 1960 was the peak. That's my working theory now, is that specific year.
Cultural meridian. But that's another story that you can read about kids, going on an adventure unsupervised and without their parents being able to text them at any moment. Get home. Where are you? Who are you with? I'm tracking you on GPS. All of that stuff.
Yeah, and it means no safety net for the kids either. You have to. You have to solve all your own problems. You have to prevent problems from happening because of your inability to handle them. Really, it really works in kind of all respects, and it's just one slight kind of societal change. Nighttime is really interesting. In all sorts of older stuff. The crazy shit always happens at night. Mm-hmm. Jack the Ripper striking in the darkness of alleys. It's interesting that in Stand By Me, that was a daytime thing. But I mean, the part of that story is that they're out for the day, and they're fully expecting to come home, and this is just a day, a fun day. But generally, all the cool stuff is happening at night because the night is strange and weird and untapped. Now the night's been tapped, but you have a different set of problems when you're cut off from all the things that you can't even think how hard you have to work now to cut yourself off. Like if you're a kid, you have to put your phone on airplane mode to avoid your parents.
No one would do that in a billion years.
No, there'd be an Amber Alert for you by the time you were home.
Yeah, and it goes back to that stupid criticism that I mentioned yesterday, or the stupid conclusion of people cutting themselves off from dopamine culture by just deleting the apps on their phone. Like, okay, yeah, cool suggestion that exactly zero people will take. It's not happening.
Oh, no. I just thought of how the Hardy Boys would be completely impossible now. In the same way that I wonder if kids now at all enjoy the old Hardy Boys books.
They're not reading anything, let alone Hardy Boys books.
I
don't know. That's just not even a thing anymore. You can get through fourth grade without even having to read. Did you see that? Having my head explode.
Go well beyond that.
Oh my gosh. You don't even have to read anymore.
Yeah. Well, the antidote here is to not be obsessed by whatever is coming up next on Netflix or whatever the hell it is. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff coming out, really engaging. Like the crime shows are fantastic. They really are very, very good. So there's evolution that matters. Those crime stories, by the way, kind of aren't ever remakes. They can't be. I think that's one of their strengths, is that they have to be, for the most part, original. That kind of by default helps them avoid a lot of the things that we're talking about.
They sidestep one of the major problems.
Yeah. But you just aren't locked into that. You aren't. There's nothing wrong with a white hat, black hat, good guy, bad guy Western. It's totally different than something you'd see now, but that's also kind of the point. You can pick up an old book. Apparently, virtually anything that was published in 1960 is incredible. But yeah, you can pick up a book that's old, but not that old. And it's probably going to be a lot more valuable than something that's just come out. You can watch The Death Wish. You can watch the Columbo. You can watch what was the other one, Kevin?
Taxi Driver.
Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
It's all there. It's there. And if you don't take it, it's on you. I mean, this is really simple. It's there. You just do the thing. Read the book. They're pennies. You can go into a Salvation Army and buy great books for 50 cents. That's where I get them. I buy a lot of books at garage sales and Goodwill and Salvation Army and all of that because people throw them away. The geniuses throw them away. It's like, oh, for 50 cents, I have 20 hours of incredible entertainment / self-development. Yeah. It's like literally a penny an hour.
Yeah.
It costs more to run the light bulb I need to read the book than it does to actually read the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I look constantly at the top 10 series and movies on Netflix and HBO Max because they show it like all the time. This is the most popular. It is overwhelmingly slop.
Yeah, whether those
Absolute
are real or
slop.
not, I'm not sure that those are real.
It's not worth the time. Just nothing is. Uncharted that I watched was okay, but was it honestly the thing that I would have enjoyed most? No. I honestly watched it because it's something that I would never watch. I saw it and I'm like, this is something I would scroll past my entire life. I'm just going to watch it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you learned nothing and it was nothing. But
serious people look backwards. Is that fair to say?
I just think we're at like a really interesting time for a lot of different reasons that makes looking backwards so much more interesting. Maybe it's just me. I'm really wondering what people say in the comments to this episode, if anyone else can relate. But access to this stuff has never been more readily available.
Yep.
And we're so far removed culturally, and I think in a lot of ways in terms of craft from like the filmmaking of the past. Like lighting is one example. Like lighting is like a really hyper nerd film thing to get uptight about, but man.
Yeah, these are things that you notice that I tend not to.
Yeah, the lighting in all of these modern productions absolutely blows and is flat, and it's flat on purpose because that's how they make it, so they can do like visual effects easier and manipulate the footage in post-production. That's why they do it. And also I think that has maybe something to do with encoding reasons for delivering the film to the streamers. But regardless, whatever the reasons are, their lighting is not dynamic at all. Like there's no, like lighting used to be part of storytelling. Okay. Like whether people realize this or not, like lighting was a character essentially, in the mise-en-scène. It was part of what you paid attention to that they would use to express how a character was feeling internally. Like it was part of the experience, and now just gone, completely gone. Nobody cares. No one picks up on it. It just, second screen viewing. It's just slop, slop, slop. But yeah, that's one of the things that if you're interested in watching old films, that you will see and you can enjoy potentially. It's like, oh, like the lighting is actually a lot more interesting and dynamic than it is in anything that I've watched and that's come out in the last 15 years. There are shots that are underdeveloped or dark. Not everything has big, bright lighting on the characters' faces. And that's part of the blocking of the shot. That's part of the storyboarding for the shot. It was.
Not anymore.
It was. Now it's not. Now who cares?
This is you being old.
Yeah, it is.
Bit of a fuddy-duddy, as they used to say. What you need to embrace, Kevin, you need to get excited. You need to consume slop and get excited for next slop.
Yeah. It's the Red Letter Media,
mentality.
The Red Letter Media thing where they used to do the Nerd Crew or whatever. They did that fake podcast. I think it was called the Nerd Crew. And there was a whole rant by Rich Evans, I think, where he said, yes, consume current thing and look forward to consuming next thing.
Next thing.
And that's it. Don't go beyond that ever. One of the funniest things in that Nerd Crew is they did a whole thing where they were making fun of IP farming, and they had a list of upcoming properties, like films based off of existing IP. And the list was things like Play-Doh and I don't know, Cabbage Patch Kids or whatever. It was like every 80s or 90s IP you could imagine. And now that's a thing. And now it actually came to fruition. The Barbie movie was tremendously successful. And now they're developing a Monopoly movie, Candyland or whatever it is. Oh, we are in hell. We are inside the parody. We are living the parody. So what do you do? What do you do when your life is a parody? Oh, I don't know what you want to do, but I'm going backwards. That's the topic. That's the podcast for today. I'm headed back, going back to the past to watch the awesome movies that don't suck ass, to throw in an AVGN record or reference.
You said that. I'm like, what?
That's what I'm doing.
Did he do that on purpose?
Yes. That's where I'm at. All right. Let us know where you're at. Do you think old stuff sucks and I'm wrong? Have you been doing the same thing? What are some of your favorite things that you've watched recently that you avoided in the past because it was old and old stuff is boring? Do you refuse to watch stuff that's in black and white?
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments below. Thank you to all of our patrons. And if you want to support the podcast, go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown. We'll be back next week. Any final thoughts, Matt?
No, I had a black and white TV in my bedroom until high school.
That's a good place to end. Okay. We're out of here. See you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week, and the recent support has been amazing. Sid Poke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezer Good, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. Thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Farrakhan, Jen Mefasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Peddler, Risebread, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Vidioger. And a tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders: Atrocious Guff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight, Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, Jelksies, and of course, Trevstead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer-editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. And a special thanks to Main Gear for powering all of our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.